This story starts on a cool summer night. A blue moon is shining brightly in the night sky, just above a beautiful castle. Gusts of wind can be seen moving swiftly. The scene shifts to a torch burning, warming up the castle stairwell. The broken heart of a man with blood spilled on the cold ground in the deepest part of the castle dungeon. His screams were loud, but only heard in the dungeon cell. This blood belongs to a man named Ryun. Ryun is the youngest son of the prestigious Sermen family of the Drea continent. A kid who should have been living a peaceful and privileged life. Ryun is seen chained to the dungeon wall, battered and bruised, covered in his own blood. A metal bucket with burning coals heats up the tools. He was being tortured by a man with white hair and red eyes. The white-haired man grabbed Ryun by the back of his head, putting the hot rake closer to his chest. He says, "You're really interesting. The direct heirs of your clan are blessed to be born with any kind of talent." Ryun looks up at the white-haired man with eyes of hate as blood drips from his mouth. The white-haired man says he is the one who is blessed. He puts the hot rake on Ryun's chest and burns his flesh slowly, moving down to his abdomen. Ryun coughs up more blood while his flesh is seared like beef on a frying pan. The white-haired man says you were cursed instead and have no talent at all, yet you've got such a stubborn life force, right? Ryun is trying to say Pilea, but unable to speak. He says just Ki, me, Alret, with bloodshot eyes wanting death to come quickly. Sons Peyton points his fingers saying, "I have no idea what you're saying. Should have just left your tongue alone, huh? I thought maybe I could get something out of the Sermen bloodlines. But I am getting tired of this, truly," as he walks away, laughing frantically at our MC. He stops by the gate, then turns his head to face Ryun. "Ha! Don't die today. Because our Peyton." Sons looks back at Ryun as he say this, with a twisted smirk, with evil in his eyes. He says, "No. This great Lord's sons has destroyed your Sermen house. Today marks the 3rd anniversary of that day." Ryun bows his head down to the cement floor, clenching his teeth tightly. The moon shines out of the steel-look window as cold air creeps inward. Ryun sits with his back against the wall, looking downward. He then looks up, thinking what the white-haired man told him. So, 3 years have passed, eh? My Sermen house. The next scene shows several knights on horseback rushing forward, carrying the house's flag. The Dark Zone, a place where monsters are said to be born endlessly. The family that guards the front line against their invasion of the continent of Drea. Among the 5 great noble houses of the continent of Drea, bloodshed was spilled as the knights ride through the horde of monsters. And the strongest of the grand noble house is Sermen. But with the sudden disappearance of my father and brothers, the house has severely declined, and another grand noble house, the Patton family, took that opportunity to crush the Sermen house. What they wanted was the blessing passed down the Sermen line. The blood of the dragon. Those with that blood become a 7-circle archmage at age 10 and a swordmaster at 15. But I could never become one. Once in several centuries, someone is born with a curse of Demon King Arcan, and the cursed one was me. The boy is chained up while the Demon King Arcan looks directly at our MC. Any swordmanship or magic, I could never learn it. If only I didn't have that curse. If only I had power. We wouldn't have been trampled by the Peyton family. Tears flow down Ryun's face, washing the bloodstains away. He thinks of Sons Peyton. I wouldn't have suffered cruel experiments and torture by that bastard Sons Peyton known as the white-haired man. More tears is flowing down the face of our MC. No, I'm too tired to even regret anymore. A pack of rats smelled the blood moving towards Ryun with glowing eyes. A big rat came closer, with reddish yellow eyes ready to eat Ryun's flesh. He can feel it. Today will be my last day. He thinks this as the pack of rats pounces onto his defeated body. Now, this is the end of my life. I can finally be at peace. This is something straight out of a nightmare. The screen fades into darkness. But death wasn't the end. When Ryan opens his eyes again, he sees that he woke up in an unknown world called Adion, an endless battlefield where gods treat human lives like toys. Next, a huge demon beast stares at him in the distance. In this slaughterhouse of a world, Ryun rises from being among the weak to then becoming OP as the Ghost King, mastering the arts of an assassin, necromancer, and specter, challenging the gods themselves. Several warriors are seen on the battlefield fighting endlessly. One of the gods emerge in a golden light, looking at our MC. He places his hand on his chin, watching our MC as he has become intrigued. His golden eyes are sharp like daggers as he smirks on what plans he has for our MC. Ryun is seen smiling, holding two power swords with power brimming at the peak of being known as the Ghost King. The god raises one finger up and forms an energy ball, then flicks it down so fast it hit Ryun instantly. Our MC is lying on the ground, spurting blood out of his mouth as the god in golden aura watches him. He says, "I shall grant you a wish." The god in golden aura shows a sinister smile, while Ryun reaches out towards the god, not wanting to die a second time. His hand is slowly fading away into nothingness. But this time, the games all the gods made doesn't stick. He awakens a second time with beads of sweat on his face. He is in a daze, regressing back in his 12-year-old body, still carrying every skill, every memory, and every ounce of power he earned for himself in Adion. Now, with time regressed and his strength intact, he sets out to rewrite fate, protect the Sermon family, and turn reality into his personal game board. And first on his list, a bloody, calculated revenge on the Peyton house. The same family that ruined everything and killed him the first time. As he's trying to focus, he sees a young girl with blue eyes saying, "Young master," she kept calling, shaking him as if trying to drag him out of death's grip itself. He forced his eyes open. The maid's face hovered above him, eyes wide, trembling glasses, panic spilling from every breath. His attention fixed on this girl, and he hears her clearly saying, "Young master." Ryun says, Colin? Colin thinks to herself, how could someone with such a weak body overwork himself like this? Ryun says loudly, "Nanny Colin of the Sermon house?" Colin looks at our MC with beads of sweat as if she just saw a ghost. He says, "Why is she in front of me?" She looked younger, far younger than she should be. The scene cuts outside of the mansion where our younger MC resides. He says, "Colin, mirror, hurry!" Colin finds a mirror and brings it to Ryun. Ryun holds the mirror nervously as he looks at himself, not believing he's back in his younger body. Ryun looks towards Colin and asks her, "What day is it today?" Colin looks at him in shock as she says, "According to the Drea calendar, it's August 17th, 1892. He says 1892 while looking at his hand. That's when I was 12 years old. Thinking to himself, having beads of sweat roll down the side of his face. And at the same time, the fire burns in our MC eyes, thinking of the past. Still sitting on the bed, he also thinks of the Grand Noble Sermine house. The moment it began to fall at the hands of the Peyton family. He remembers the golden figure from before reappeared in his mind, repeating the same promise he would grant the boy's wish. Our MC tightened his grip on the mirror, trying to steady his thoughts. He stared at his reflection, realizing he had truly returned to this point in time. Footsteps approached. Colin stepped aside as an older man entered the room, the same man he remembered from many years later. Ryun recognized him with a hard stare. Alejandro, captain of the servant knights. He says it seems you are truly unwell, and allowed him to rest rather than train today. Ryun watched him carefully, masking the turmoil beneath his calm expression. Colin hurried to fuss over him again, but before she could continue, he cut her off with a quiet refusal. Colin froze, startled by the sudden firmness in his voice. Alejandro studied the Ryun's expression, but Ryun only straightened his posture and insisted he was fine. Colin turned her head with beads of sweat, unsure, while he moved and sat off the edge of the bed and asked what today's training would be. Alejandro hesitated at the sudden interest. Ryun's refusal to rest startled him more than any illness. He finally answered that it would be long sword footwork practice. Ryun rose from the bed, standing on his feet with unexpected calm. His tone held an unusual certainty enough for Alejandro to question whether he was truly the same young master he raised. Our MC gave a steady affirmation, naming himself as a member of House Sermin without the slightest doubt. The words triggered a memory of the golden figure whispering about granting a wish. And Ryun wondered if this strange regression back to the past had been tied to that promise. But whatever the case may be, he no longer cared. His chance was here. He decided to skip the sword footwork entirely. The curse within him stirred, and the shadow of his older self seemed to stand behind him, urging him to move forward. This time, he would go straight to hunting monsters instead. This was the opening he had never been given before. This is his chance to overturn everything. Resolve sharpened in his eyes. He would not waste this chance. Outside, sunlight washed over the estate grounds as a golden status window formed before him. It displayed his sparse stats, all at their lowest. The curse of Arcan is still clung to him, sealing magic and attracting beasts just as it had in his former life. Even so, the system responded. The window appeared because he carried a power no one else on the continent ever possessed. He tested it with focus, confirming that even in this reverted body, the ability remained intact. Alejandro entered again, informing him that the monster had been brought out. The boy dismissed the status window and followed Alejandro outside. They stepped into the enclosed training grounds, where a chained goblin screeched and thrashed. Its eyes burned with feral hunger as saliva drips from its mouth. The moment it sensed him, the goblin lunged with deep anger and hunger, tearing across the arena toward our MC of the Sermin family. Ryun Sermin. Dust kicked up around its feet as it was closing the distance. But Ryun stood firm. He held the wooden sword, slowly raising it. Alejandro and Colin watched from the edge of the grounds. Beads of sweat produced on Colin's face as she looks towards the young master, urging Alejandro to stop the test immediately. She reminded him that Ryun had always collapsed, even from a small encounter with a low-tier goblin. Alejandro stayed silent, conflicted, eyes fixed on Ryun's stance. Ryun knew that Colin is right. Until yesterday, the sight of a monster would have froze him entirely. But this time, he grounded his breathing, seeing it clearly. He had lived through far worse. A single goblin no longer felt like an unfeasible threat. The curse fluttered. A warning flashed before him as the system window reacted. Demon King Archon's influence awakening inside our MC's body. The fear that haunted him since childhood rushed up violently, amplified beyond its natural force, twisting pressure around his chest. For a moment, the familiar terror tried to drag him back into the helplessness of his former life. Pain spiked behind his eyes. Shadows rose behind him, the silhouette of something monstrous echoing the curse that had defined his fate as he felt it behind him. He steadied himself. He understood it now. The curse didn't only suppress magic. It fed fear into his nerves, turning any creature of darkness into a fucking nightmare. Even this panic was part of Demon King Archon's curse. Alejandro stepped forward, sensing the spike of fear and declaring that's enough for today. Ryun tightened his grip and refused to give up this early. This will not do. He moved before anyone could stop him, rushing towards the goblin as it shrieked again and charged to our MC in return. Beads of sweat formed from thinking too much. I got this. His footwork was rough, but he kept his determination together. This time, he wasn't the old Ryun he used to be. His opponent was only a goblin, the smallest step on the road he designed to walk. He forced his fear down and reminded himself of the truth. He could do this cause compared to the crushing presence of the golden threat he once faced. This cursed-driven fear felt insignificant. The goblin's shriek barely scratched him. That memory alone made the current threat feel small. The creature lunged, but Ryun rushed forward, closing the distance. Flames from the past flickered in his eyes, scorched earth, twisting shadows. A towering golden figure whose gaze had once shattered his resolve. Against that, a goblin meant nothing. He raised his wooden sword and struck. The blow landed flawlessly, sending the creature stumbling back. Colin and Alejandro froze in place, stunned by Ryun's strength. Colin's face went pale, hands covering her mouth with beads of sweat. Alejandro watched in a silent awe. A notification window appeared before Ryun. He had pushed through Archon's curse, breaking past the weight that once held him down. The rank of Archon's curse has lowered, its influence weakening. Another message followed. His fear of monsters dissolved completely. The goblin trembled under his glare, sensing a shift in power it didn't understand. Captain. Ryun stepped closer, asking Alejandro for a real sword. His voice carried a conviction that silenced the entire arena. Alejandro watched with steady eyes and said, "Will you be all right?" As he took out a sword to give to Ryun, Colin worried aloud, but Ryun answered with nothing more than a calm, sharp smile. Alejandro felt a strange mix of pride and disbelief. Realizing something inside Ryun had changed, he believed that Ryun had grown into a man now. This is what he always wanted to see. The goblin cowered, knees shaking. Ryun approached without hesitation. Shadows of the past embraced him, but they no longer controlled him. He lifted the sword high, and with a clean, decisive strike, he severed the monster's head. Blood sprayed across his cheek, but his eyes remained steady. Alejandro watched Ryun with a quiet tremor in his chest. For the first time in years, he felt something warm rise within him. Hope for the declining Sermon family. Colin stood beside him, eyes wide as he told her to observe carefully. Ryun's stance, his expression, the bloodied sword at his side, all of it made one thing clear. The child he once protected now looked undoubtedly like the next head of Sermin House. Ryun walked away from the goblin's corpse, its blood trailing behind him as he approached the manor. Later, alone at the washroom sink, he splashed cold water across his face. His reflection stared back, tired, tense, but steady. He accepted the status window and system support worked. He overcame Askren's curse and showed that he's capable of growth. For the first time, the weight in his chest had detached. But when he opened the status window again, he focused on it. His experience had increased. Yet, the gain was painfully small. In spite of everything, he would be under an obligation to hunt thousands or even tens of thousands of goblins to level up. Time wouldn't allow that. He needed to move faster. Images flashed through his mind. Flames erupt, the day of cries echoing, and the ruin destined to fall upon the sermon house. That day was drawing near. Still, at least, I confirmed I could overcome Archon's curse. Anyway, that alone meant he wasn't helpless. He tightened his grip on the glowing system window. He couldn't waste this chance. Right now, the Sermon household was barely holding its place among the great houses. Now that 2 years had passed since his father and older brothers vanished without a trace, their enemies were quiet for now, but it wouldn't last. He remembered that bastard's face, the cold schemes hidden behind polite smiles. The clock was ticking, but he confirmed at least one path to leveling up. Ryun steadies his breath, the faint glow curling around his fist as resolve hardens behind his eyes. In that charged silence, he decides the next step. If brute force worked, then verifying the second method becomes inevitable. The great hall opens before him, and Sena arrives like a storm-given form. Her crimson hair drapes over a presence that needs no introduction. Power rolling off her in waves of aura, crackling flames roar at her heels as she walks on marbled floor. The beautiful manner shined ever so elegant in the sun rays. Word of the goblin hunt had already reached her. She settles onto the crimson velvet sofa across from Ryun, a blade's sharp gaze fixed on the boy she once dismissed. Even so, she asks, why have he called her here? The only answer was truly for magic training. In Ryun's mind, memories organized. Sena, leader of House Sermin's magic corps, a seventh circle archmage wrapped in flames of death, one of the few on the continent, rivaling even Alejandro, a woman cloaked in mysteries only the family head, his father, seems to understand. Her irritation revealed itself quickly. She reminds him casually that magic differs from sword training. Have you forgotten that we stopped due to your lack of talent? That they abandoned magical training because his body couldn't sense mana nor wield a blade, let alone excel in these fields of study. She speaks as if these facts are carved in stone. But Ryun remains calm. He knows all of it. He lived all of it. The curse of Archon had stolen every talent he should have had until yesterday. He leans forward, voice low with quiet defiance. What? You're saying you can feel mana now? Her mask of confidence cracks almost instantly. Shock submerged across her face. The cup on the table trembles. And then Sena called forth a red dragon, born of flames, her aura erupting through the room. You may open your eyes now. I've projected an image before you, one only magic can reveal. Ryun looks with sharp focus. He answers without hesitation. A beautiful red dragon. Shock ripples through her. Ryun says, "Did I get it wrong?" Sena replies, no. You really have changed since yesterday. But how? Unless your understanding of magic is so close to mine. I even layered symbols to disguise it as something completely different. She closes her eyes, then places her left hand onto her chin to hold it in place. On the other side, she's acting superfluous, deeply thinking about, what method did you use for the family's curse? I taught you how to sense magic, sure, but how did you suddenly grasp mana? And why? Why can he see through her illusions? A bright golden glow appears from the window, bursting into the room, like an angelic voice saying, "Saina." He says, "Even if you can sense mana, you still can't use our family's inherited cultivation method," which is exactly why he needed her help. Her voice lowers and her words turn heavier. Magic can't be used unless it's imbued. Magical cultivation is essential for leveling up. You already tried it, didn't you? But do you realize what you just said? Helping you cultivate mana means I'd be moving the mana through your body myself. Flames coil around her again. I'd literally be holding your life in my hands. Are you prepared for that? He looks her dead in the eye, determined. A tiny smile tugs at his lips. If she wanted to kill him, she could have done so at any moment. But right now, I'm completely powerless against Saina. Ryun knew Saina was the only person he could rely on. Even in his previous life, when the ambush swallowed the estate in flames, she had stood before him. He remembered the heat, the collapsing buildings, and the way she cut down enemies. Even as her own body wavered, mana drained away, tearing through her body as she collapsed. She protected him until the very end and smiled. That memory hardened his resolve. He called her name quietly. When she turned, he told her the truth he never said in his past life. He trusted her more than anyone else. His words stunned her. A faint flush rose behind the mask, but she didn't look away. Soon after, Ryun knelt on the polished floor with his upper body bare. Symbols rises under the faint glow of mana. Saina prepared the ritual, reminding him of the pain he was about to endure. He nodded without hesitation. She said, "Let's begin." Scarlet energy unraveled around her like a living flame, illuminating ancient symbols carved into the air. This is the Blue Earth cultivation method, passed only to direct heirs, a technique that shaped raw mana into the core of an archmage's power. She had only taught him the theory. Yet, you can already guide magic with it. Ryun studied her movements silently. In his past life, he had trained under the Blue Earth cultivation method as well, using it to raise both level and physical attributes back in Aedeon. Now he would start again from the very beginning. Saina's voice cut through his thoughts, saying he needed to focus. Ah, yes. He forced his breathing into rhythm, letting the warmth of mana seep through his flesh. Saina placed both hands on his back, and golden light surged into him with punishing force. She warned him that the pain would be intense, that he must not cry out or resist. Ryun embraced himself. Saina warned him to stop if the pain became unbearable. Her voice stayed firm as the mana storm became firm around them. Ryun felt the first wave of pain rip through him, fierce and scorching, heavy enough to shake him to his core. Agonizing pain flare up, dragging fragments from his past to the surface. A blood-soaked room appeared, chains hanging from his wrists. The white-haired man was smiling through the mist of slaughter. His body trembled, but he refused to withdraw. He stabilized his breath and pushed through the pain. He had survived much worse before returning to this life. Mana burst again, and Saina's flow pressed deeper. Ryun clenched his jaw, beads of sweat ran down his face. His resolve didn't waver. He reminded her, though his voice was rough, that he trusted her more than anyone else. Saina's eyes softened for an instant before she resumed the ritual. Eyes closed, mana focused. The cultivation intensified. His veins glowed as mixed colors of mana twisted violently through his body. Saina guided the mana pressure with both hands, but the curse responded immediately. Ryun felt it ignite inside of him like a chained beast breaking free from its cage. The system flickered before him. Archon's curse is activating. Mana scattered all around. His body tugged under the impact as the flow shattered again and again. Each time Sena poured more mana into him, the curse struck back in defiance, breaking apart everything she built. Archon's curse. It's exactly as Lord Gaju described. Cracks of golden light tore across his body, forcing sharp breaths out of him. Still, she didn't retreat. She had expected this. Her voice stayed steady as she increased the mana. The curse flared repeatedly, notifications ringing in his mind with persistent speed. Mana fractured, warped, and dispersed through his core until his entire body shook. Ryun kept himself upright, refusing to collapse. Only he could see the notifications, and only he could feel how the curse fought her mana on par with equal violence. Sena strained behind him, teeth clenched as she fought to shape the flow despite the curse ripping it apart. He knew the result clearly. Even the strength of a 7th Circle Archmage couldn't suppress a curse of this grade. But with Adion's cultivation methods, he knew they could work around it. Let the magic-shattering curse activate. This is exactly as he wanted. Mana scattered violently throughout his body, but this time, he guided the chaos inward. The moment it tried to escape, he forced its range to remain trapped inside his own body. He would fool the curse and keep every fragment of mana contained. His focus sharpened. The scattered energy spun wildly, but none of it slipped outside. Young master? Sena watched him in disbelief as the runaway mana stayed locked in. The curse activated again and again as gold and purple mana flow around him. Notifications flashed through his mind with each activation. Yet, he continued resisting, holding the mana like a net pulled tight over a raging river. Notifications piled up in his vision until they blurred together. Heat surged through his meridians in his body. Each pathway burned as if molten lava coursed through his veins. His eyes became golden with power, like the god of Adion. His breathing hitched from the intensity, but he refused to let the curse claim victory over him. Like hell, I'd lose to this. He had endured pain far worse. Blood spurts as memories surged from the depths of his past life. Goblins, blades, and a roaring blue dragon he once commanded. His body had collapsed many times before, but his mind never had. He reminded himself who he truly is. He wasn't some powerless, noble child. He is the master player of Adion. His mana understanding didn't come from this world at all. It was carved into his soul long before he awakened here. His body might have been weak, but his soul remembered every rule, every trick, every meridian mana could take. That memory stirred now, rising like a killer instinct. He channeled that knowledge etched in his soul, forcing the scattered mana to take form. His muscles shuddered as the energy accumulated instead of breaking apart. Light exploded from his frame, wrapping him in golden arcs as his control strengthened. Eyes widened with energy. Archon's name rolled through Ryun's fading consciousness like a cabin lost in an icy snowstorm. The skeletal wraith loomed over our MC. Its blue flames whistled as it dragged its skeletal hand through the air. He also heard the golden-haired god of Adion scorn beneath it, amused, almost bored in a sense, insisting even Adion's so-called god had been nothing to him. The pattern etched on his body were seen, flashing in his mind. Ryun's body answered before his thoughts did. Mana burst forth from his core in a violent fluorescence of blue and golden light. Even his pineal gland had activated like an unspoken Uzumaki in the land hidden in the leaves. Cracking the darkness open, his stance widened, his burned muscles locking in place as the surge roared through him. From a distance, Se-na staggered forward. Fallen into a stupor shone across her face. She reached out instinctively, only for the mana pouring off Ryun to push her back. Then the backlash hit him. Heat tore through his nerves. His skin flashed gold and then violet, falling slowly. He crashed against the tile, stunned as yellow sparks flickers off him like smoldering remnants of a fire. She shouted for him, voice shaking, but he barely heard it. Intense pain swelled until it swallowed him whole. Our MC says to himself, "Damn, it hurts like hell." His consciousness is slowly slipping. But it's fine now. The scene cuts to blood, covering the moonlit window. The iron room, the chains, the blood soaking the floor beneath him. Plague doctors debating if they should cut off his arm just to test regeneration. The quiet suggestion that perhaps he was a failed specimen they should simply discard altogether. Compared to that, today's agony felt pretty gentle. A blade came whistling. Someone screamed. A body hit the ground. Ryun's vision twisted back into focus, just in time to see a masked guard fall, split open by a man in cloak. Another was carved down before he could even reach for a weapon. Panic snapped through the dungeon as the survivors finally registered what was happening. Ryun came back to his senses. But Ryun wasn't looking at him. He was looking at the moonlit sky. Cold air rushed deep in his lungs, silently fading. Moonlight painted the forest a slight blue. Wind carried the faint scent of moss and freedom. Eyes opened, bleeding and panting. Unsure if this was a hallucination or salvation, the blood-soaked figure looming over him. Alejandro's battered silhouette comes into focus. Deep breaths, lacerated flesh, hands shaking check to see if he's really alive. Ryun stares at him through the haze, disbelief cutting through with teary eyes. Alejandro rushed to find him. He fought his way through hell to reach him. Alejandro's shone broken as he kneels, arrows shot from his back like cruel thorns. Whispering an apology he shouldered far too long. He held our MC in embrace, holding him as though shielding him from the cruel world itself, even as blood leaks beneath them. Each breath sounds like it's tearing him apart. But his grip stays firm, protective, like a loving father. Ryun cried deeply for Alejandro, memories bleeding into the present. The cell, the screams, the experiments, the hopeless nights where he had begged for someone, anyone, to come save him. Compared to that endless torment, this pain feels almost insignificant because now he's not alone. When he finally wakes again, sunlight riddles through an unfamiliar window, warm and gentle, a sharp distinction to the nightmare he'd relived in his dream. So the cultivation had succeeded. He should be cheering from happiness, but seeing those memories again in his dream killed the mood entirely. Still, he steadies himself. It's fine. That won't ever happen again. Not when he finally has the power to fight. But no one can find out about it, especially from the attentive Patan family. He remembers their banner, the symbol looming like a silent warning. He's still not strong enough to stop them yet, which means the next thing he must do is accelerate the fall of the Sermon family himself. Clutching his fist, thinking to himself. As dawn finally bled into a new day, Ryun woke up, sitting on his bed, hand on his head saying that the mana plateform method had failed miserably. Se-na looks and says what? It meant hiding the truth from her and Alejandro. Even as they stood by his bedside with concern etched into their faces, Ryun hiding his excitement. But he couldn't burden them with the reality he carried. Because even if he told them, would they even believe a story like his, and help him bring down the Payton family once and for all.